lawnmower pull starts to bikes that wobble like jelly, these are the most disappointing motorcycles of the 1960s. Buckle up, this is a crash course in design and engineering gone hilariously wrong. Harley-Davidson Topper. Alright, the Harley-Davidson Topper was proof that even giants can stumble, and stumble hard. In a move that baffled Harley purists, the company swapped its roaring V-twins for a puny 165cc two-stroke engine and ditched its rebellious image for a scooter. That's like Metallica ditching metal for smooth jazz. And oh, the aesthetics? Boxy panels, an oversized seat, and an unappealing, flat design that gave off utility cart vibes rather than cool ride. But the real kicker? That pull start mechanism. Imagine your badass biker friends revving their beasts, and there you are, yanking a cord like you're starting a lawnmower. Not exactly the stuff of legends. Riders who wanted smooth acceleration got an unwelcome surprise. The Topper sputtered and jerked like a caffeine-deprived office worker on a Monday morning. The marketing for the Topper deserves a dishonorable mention. Harley pitched it as an everyman scooter, conveniently forgetting that the everyman didn't want to look like a milkman in traffic. It lacked the signature Harley growl, replacing it with a sound akin to a mosquito with laryngitis. Buyers were so unimpressed that Harley quietly buried the Topper in its product graveyard, hoping no one would notice. Spoiler alert, people noticed. Despite its short-lived run, the Topper remains a fascinating chapter in Harley's history. A cautionary tale of what happens when you try to sell a rebellious brand on a glorified grocery getter. BSA Bantam Bushman. So, the Bantam Bushman was like that one kid in gym class who tries really hard but trips over their shoelaces. Designed as an off-road adventure bike, it looked more like a Frankenstein monster assembled from leftover parts. Its stance was awkward, its proportions were laughable, and its overall vibe screamed last-minute science project. BSA's attempt to make the Bushman rugged was unintentionally comedic. They slapped on tiny wheels that struggled to grip anything more challenging than a gravel driveway. And that exhaust pipe running absurdly high along the side? Sure, it kept water out, but it also made sure your leg got a toasty reminder of why protective gear is essential. The Bushman came in shades of beige and olive green, as if to apologize for itself in advance. Riders often joke that it camouflaged itself in shame. Performance-wise, its 175cc engine barely managed to putter through trails, leaving many adventurers stranded in the very wilderness the bike was supposed to conquer. The sad irony is that the Bushman had the potential to be a game-changer, but its poor execution left it floundering. It's a bike that makes you think, what could have been? But only briefly, before moving on to something better. Honda Dream 305. Picture this. The Honda Dream 305 was supposed to be a dream. But in reality, it was more like that bizarre dream you wake up from and hope no one ever hears about. Its design was a bold attempt at futuristic style that landed somewhere between space age and alien technology gone wrong. The squared-off tank and bulbous headlight made it look like a robot that had just been told bad news. Honda's intention was clear, to create a bike that stood out. And it did, but for all the wrong reasons. Riders didn't know whether to admire its audacity or laugh at its absurdity. The Dream 305 was also surprisingly heavy for its size, making it feel more like wrestling a reluctant mule than riding a sleek machine. The performance was as quirky as its appearance. While the 305cc engine wasn't terrible, it didn't live up to the lofty aspirations its name implied. Acceleration felt sluggish, and its wide handlebars made handling more awkward than a first date. For a company that would later dominate the industry, the Dream 305 was more of a peculiar misstep. Over time, the Dream 305 faded into obscurity. Honda learned from its mistakes, refining its designs and performance to become the juggernaut we know today. But this particular dream is one they probably hope stays forgotten. Velocette LE. So, the Velocette LE, also known as the Nobody Bike, overstayed its welcome by a good decade. While it debuted in the late 1940s, by the swinging 60s, it was painfully clear this bike was anything but groovy. Designed with police work in mind, it ended up being equally unpopular with officers and civilians alike. One of the LE's biggest selling points was its quiet engine. Unfortunately, this feature also made it the least intimidating vehicle ever used by law enforcement. It sounded less like a motorcycle and more like an electric toothbrush. Prompting many a chuckle from those it was supposed to chase down. Aesthetically, the LE was a disaster. Its boxy, utilitarian design made it look like a motorized bread box. The footboards were meant to make it easier to ride, but instead added to its clunky appearance. Riders often felt like they were delivering mail, not upholding the law. Despite its longevity, the Velocette LE is remembered as a relic of a bygone era, one that probably should have ended sooner. It's a bike that tried to innovate, but ended up being a mechanical punchline instead. Triumph Tina. The Triumph Tina was supposed to be a scooter for women, but let's just say it didn't exactly inspire any girl power moments. Triumph marketed it as a simple, automatic scooter that anyone could ride, but in practice, it was about as cooperative as a cat during bath time. The automatic transmission was its Achilles heel. Riders frequently found themselves stranded mid-ride when the gears decided to take an unscheduled vacation. And climbing hills? Forget it. Watching a Tina struggle up a slope was like watching a toddler try to carry a watermelon. Comical and a little sad. Aesthetically, the Tina was uninspiring. Its fully enclosed bodywork gave it a plasticky, toy-like appearance. Instead of sleek and stylish, it looked like something you'd win at a carnival. The worst part? Triumph thought it was the future of motorcycling for women. The Tina flopped hard, and Triumph quickly abandoned the project. It's now a cautionary tale in design and marketing, a reminder that even the best intentions can lead to catastrophic results if executed poorly. Yamaha T80. The next ugliest one is the Yamaha T80 that was marketed as a big motorcycle. But let's face it, it was about as intimidating as a wet sponge. Its 80cc engine was perfect if your goal was to keep up with middle school kids on bicycles. And while Yamaha was gunning for affordability, they apparently forgot that even a cheap bike needs to look like it belongs on the road. The T80 was comically small. You didn't sit on it, you perched. Adults riding it looked like they were auditioning for a circus act. Its wheels were so skinny you could have sworn they were borrowed from a shopping cart. And the handling? Oh, it was glorious, if you enjoy the sensation of being flung sideways by a slight breeze. But the real piece de resistance was the design. The headlight and handlebars seemed to have been installed at different times by people who weren't talking to each other. Riders complained that it felt like steering a poorly assembled IKEA chair. And if you dared to take it out on the open road, good luck. Cars would whiz by with drivers laughing and pointing, adding to the humiliation. In the end, the T80 was a swing and a miss. Yamaha moved on to better, faster, and more respectable machines, leaving the T80 in the dust, a tiny, unimpressive puff of dust. Harley-Davidson XLCH Sportster. So, the Harley-Davidson XLCH Sportster was Harley's attempt to create a sporty, high-performance bike. What they delivered was a vibrating, ear-splitting beast that handled about as well as a drunk walrus on a unicycle. This bike was less about speed and more about surviving the ride without your teeth rattling loose. The XLCH's engine had plenty of bark, but very little bite. Sure, it was loud. Harley wouldn't have it any other way, but the power delivery was so unpredictable that every twist of the throttle felt like a gamble. Would you surge forward with grace? Or would the bike cough and wobble like an asthmatic grandpa? Only fate knew the answer. The design was another bone of contention. The bike had an overly stretched frame that made it look like someone had taken a regular Harley and photoshopped it badly. The tank was awkwardly wide, making the bike feel heavier than it already was. And the seat? Don't get me started on the seat. It was as comfortable as a rock wrapped in sandpaper. For Harley fans, the XLCH was a bitter pill to swallow. They wanted power, speed, and style, but instead they got a loud, awkward bike that was more exhausting than exhilarating. Ducati 250 Monza. Have you ever wondered if the Ducati 250 Monza was the motorcycle equivalent of a middle child? Overlooked, underappreciated, and desperate for attention? Unfortunately, its attention-seeking behavior came in the form of a design that looked like a fever dream. Imagine a bike with mismatched parts that seemed to have been thrown together by a blindfolded mechanic. The engine itself was decent, but the handling? Oh boy. The Monza wobbled like a duck on ice. Riders reported that it struggled to stay stable at high speeds, making long rides an anxiety-inducing experience. Its suspension was so stiff you'd swear it was designed to make you feel every pebble on the road. Then there was the styling, or lack thereof. The rear end looked like it had been sliced off too early, and the front forks were so spindly they seemed to be on the verge of snapping. And the color options? Let's just say they didn't help. Ducati must have raided a pastel paint factory because the Monta's palette made it look like an Easter egg on wheels. Despite these flaws, the Monta still managed to find a niche audience, mostly because it was cheap. But ask any owner, and they'll tell you it was a love-hate relationship, emphasis on the hate. Norton 650 SS. The Norton 650 SS was supposed to be the sports special that redefined British motorcycling. Instead, it was like a cake with amazing frosting but a rock-hard center. Nice to look at, but not much fun once you dig in. This bike promised performance and style, but it delivered questionable reliability and a ride that could leave you needing a chiropractor. The 650cc engine had some punch, but the vibrations were so intense you'd feel like you were riding a jackhammer. Long-distance rides became endurance tests, with riders often stopping to check if their fillings were still intact. And let's not forget the handling. Cornering on the 650 SS felt like trying to steer a sofa on roller skates. Aesthetically, it was a mixed bag. Some loved its aggressive stance, but others felt it looked unfinished, as if Norton had run out of budget halfway through the design process. The exhaust pipes were disproportionately large, sticking out like a pair of unkempt antennae, and the seat looked like it belonged on a completely different bike. The Norton 650 SS is remembered more as a missed opportunity than a true icon. It had all the ingredients for greatness, but couldn't quite put them together in a way that made sense. Suzuki T20 Super 6. So, the Suzuki T20 Super 6 sounded promising. A 250cc 6-speed sport bike? Sign us up! But reality hit harder than an unexpected speed bump. The T20 was fast, yes, but not in a good way. Its power delivery was so erratic that it felt like the bike had a mind of its own, and that mind wasn't particularly friendly. Visually, the T20 was trying way too hard. The bullet nose looked more like a missile that misfired, and the oversized exhaust pipes could have doubled as trumpets in a marching band. The angular design gave off the vibe of a wannabe transformer stuck halfway through its transformation. The handling was just as chaotic. The bike's lightweight frame and powerful engine made for a combination that was scarier than exhilarating. Riders often joked that the T20 was perfect for people who enjoyed gambling with their lives. Despite its flaws, the T20 did have a following. It was fast and affordable, which appealed to adrenaline junkies on a budget. But for everyone else, it was just another reminder that speed isn't everything, especially when the rest of the bike is a hot mess.